building. This happened in Civic Center Park, which was near the Capitol and near the protest, but we're told it did not happen as part of the protest. Apparently, a man pulled out a hatchet and went after 3 people, and then somebody, a citizen, pulled out a gun and shot the man with a hatchet. The Denver police tweeted just a short time ago, quoting here, Denver officers on the scene in an area of Colfax and Broadway. In response to the shooting, at present, 1 person has been transported. We believe that's the man with the hatchet. For medical treatment. There is no available suspect information at this time. The information will be provided as available. That goes on to say that they had a couple of other people walk in the hospital. They're not sure if that was part of the attack, and we still don't know if the person with the hatchet actually attacked other people before he was shot. But again, we don't believe this was part of the protest, which was happening at the steps of the Capitol. More on that as it comes in. Well, the tragic death of George Floyd has touched off a wave of proposals for police reform. Here's one suggestion from Brian Fallon, former spokesman for Hillary Clinton and one-time Attorney General Eric Holder. Fallon simply tweets, "Defund the police." That might sound like a reckless idea after a week of violent clashes across the country, but that's exactly the direction the mayor here in Los Angeles is heading. And it seems to be catching traction with some political circles as minority lawmakers push for police reform bills in the wake of Floyd's death. With us now via Skype, Kyron Skinner. She is a Fox News contributor and professor at Carnegie Mellon University. She is also a research fellow at the Hoover Institution. Kyron, always good to see you.
Thank you.
I just have to ask you, you think about defunding police and you look at towns and cities and neighborhoods across a place like Los Angeles and Chicago and who really, I mean, have they thought this out? Who wants to live in a neighborhood with no police presence? Who wants to start a business in a neighborhood with no police presence? I mean, it just doesn't sound like they're doing their homework on this issue.
I think you're right. Defund the police is a catchy hashtag, but in the midst of coronavirus and the riots that we've had, the need for public safety and public health support, it doesn't make sense to make defunding the police the center of the conversation right now. I understand as an African American the fear that we feel from police in our country, from law enforcement, from all kinds of officers, no matter where we go. But this is a time to take the racial sentiments that we feel and that really exist in our society and focus on research and reason as we make proposals. But immediately defunding the police, and that's the argument of many in the various movements, would lead to anarchy, which goes to my other point. I think that's where many people who are using the opportunity of George Floyd would like us to go.
Yeah, it's interesting because Pastor Corey Brooks, and I'll put this on the screen if I can, Kyron, because I want your response on the end. Pastor Corey Brooks, who works out of Chicago, and he wrote this op-ed in the American Conservative, and I want to read a part of it. It says, quoting here, liberal politicians in Illinois and across the country have fanned the flames of anger over the past several years. Their policies and worldview emphasize government as the solution to all problems, except paradoxically when we need police. Our mayor, Lori Lightfoot, has been unable or unwilling to put a stop to the violence in the streets of our home city, in part because she has been unable to offer a strong defense for good law enforcement agents doing the necessary work of making our neighborhoods livable. I mean, you go back just to Memorial Day weekend, Kyron, and you had 30 people shot on the south side of Chicago, and 9 or 10 of them died. I mean, that's where you need a heavy police presence, no?
We do need police, but I think the debate is really not about the number of police, but about responsible policing. And we don't really know how to get rid of bad people in the police ranks. We don't know how to detect them. And I think that's what should be the center of our conversations. Often the bias-busting classes don't get bias out of people. They don't identify it. They don't solve it. There's something else that we have to look at here. That's what I'd like to engage in. It's not police versus no police, but it's responsible policing that protects all. African Americans in need protection, sometimes even from the police themselves. I think we can do better than the debate we're having right now.
Yeah, we led into this, Kyron, by saying that LA Mayor Eric Garcetti is kind of heading in the direction of defunding police, taking about $250 million away. I want to play a soundbite from the mayor of Los Angeles and get your response.
I want you to know we will not be increasing our police budget. How can we at this moment? Our city, through our city administrative officer, identified $250 million in cuts so we could invest in jobs, in health, in education, and in healing. And that those dollars need to be focused on our Black community here in Los Angeles, as well as communities of color and women and people who have been left behind for too long.
That means that police officers are going to be out of a job in Los Angeles. That's the bottom line on that.
Let me speak to this on a couple of levels. One, a few weeks ago, the mayor was committed in Los Angeles to a substantial increase in law enforcement spending. Now he's committed to decreasing it.
Right.
That means we need to think about the leadership in that city. Did they know what they're doing in the first place? Second, this attempt to make a binary opposite of either we support the law enforcement with more money, or we can't support social services at the same time, I think needs to be addressed head on. These are bad hypotheses. They're not convincing to many people. They seem like emotional and irrational responses that just aren't going to really galvanize American support ultimately.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, look, it was a month ago that you had Eric Garcetti who was, telling his neighbors, telling people, look, snitch on your neighbors. We'll send the police out. Call the police. We'll send the police out. The police were the answer to all the coronavirus, the looters and all. I mean, the people who were breaking their stay-at-home orders. And now the police are not the answer. Kyron Skinner, we'll get back to you later. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, before there was George Floyd and the Minneapolis police, there was Ahmaud Arbery and 3 white Georgia men who are accused of chasing him down and killing him with a shotgun in their neighborhood street. There was explosive testimony during a hearing in the case on Thursday, an investigator telling the court that one of the 3 men charged in the murder of Ahmaud Arbery allegedly called him a racial slur after gunning him down. According to testimony, both Greg McMichael and his son Travis admit to the fatal shooting by the son. An investigator testified that the father believed Arbery, who was jogging, had been burglarizing a house without any evidence that Greg McMichael said, quote, it was his gut feeling, his instinct, he said. Greg and Travis McMichael are charged with felony murder and aggravated assault, while the other defendant, Roddy Bryan, is charged with felony murder and criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment for allegedly using his vehicle to trap Arbery and allow him not to escape. Well, about 100 people demonstrated outside the courthouse Thursday, often in the rain, chanting Black Lives Matter and no justice, no peace. While the massive protest nationwide sparking concerns we could see a spike in new coronavirus cases now, Los Angeles County health officials are telling protesters they should self-quarantine for 14 days. And the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, telling protesters they should assume they have been exposed to coronavirus.
You went to a protest, get a test, tell people, act as if you may have been exposed. New York City enters phase 1 Monday with all of this going on.
Despite the governor's cautious tone, there is some very good news out of New York City. The Big Apple marking a major turning point Wednesday with no new confirmed deaths from COVID-19. That is the first time since back on March 12th. The city saw 500 new fatalities each day during the pandemic's peak in early April. While most protests around the country have been peaceful, there has also been clashes with police and looting. President Trump has been pointing a finger at Antifa, and the head of the FBI seems to be charging those concerns. How concerned should we be about this group coming up? And is the president correct when he says Antifa should be classified as a terror group? We'll talk about that as we continue our live breaking coverage of the protest.
I found a way to relieve my constipation that's both gentle and fast.
New great-tasting Dalcolac soft juice works naturally with the water in your body in as little as 30 minutes. Puts you comfortably in control. New Dalcolac soft juice.
Experian has free tools to help with your credit, like your free credit report, your FICO score for free, and free credit monitoring and alerts. Download the free Experian app now.
Nicole's drowning in drama. Time for a house call.
I'm done with the drama. Bye, drama.
So what do you think is the actual problem?
Lately, people have been telling me I can't get what I want without compromising. But I proved them all wrong by streaming Tubi. It's got the content that's not on Netflix, and it's free.
Sounds like a breakthrough.
I freed the stream, baby.
Don't you wish your girlfriend was hot like me? Don't you?
You've got 10 to 12 teeth missing. You can't hide that. For years, I would dream of a place where I could go and one day come out and have all my teeth. Clear Choice put together a personalized plan. They've got a lab there. Everything gets done in the lab. And I've got the best smile I could ever ask for in one day. It is 100% transformation.
This crisis is affecting all of us. Our mental health is suffering, and most of us just don't know how to deal with it. But we can try with tools to look after our mind. A moment to breathe, mindful workouts for those feeling trapped, solutions to sleep more soundly. And now, we're helping unemployed Americans get back on their feet. Headspace can't fix everything, but it can help you cope with today and whatever tomorrow brings. Be kind to your mind at headspace.com.
Thursdays, watch TV with your favorite celebrities in their homes.
Let's go!
The most epic
Take it off!
and grossest moments. Celebrity Watch Party. Thursdays on Fox or watch anytime on Fox Now or Hulu.
NASCAR is live all weekend on Fox.
Here we go.
First on Saturday, it's Xfinity Racing.
Whoa, look at that one.
Then Sunday, it's the Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500. Live from Atlanta, Saturday and Sunday on Fox.
Unrest in America as protesters across the country take to the streets. Get all the latest developments as they unfold. Stay with Fox News Channel for continuing coverage.
Xfinity X1 editors do the work so you can do the watching. Turn your search for entertainment into something you love. Get expert curations for every mood, obsession, and more. Explore tons of collections and destinations made for fans. Just say what to watch into your Xfinity voice remote.
I got your back, you got mine. Think about you all the time. Together we can come through. That's what love's made of. When we can't be close, we can still be close.
Imagine helping their teeth become 4 times stronger, preventing cavities up to 40%. Act Kids Fluoride Rinse. Stop imagining. Start acting. And now, get anti-cavity protection in new, dye-free iced formulas.
I want to show this video because it's kind of disturbing. This happened in Buffalo a little while ago, and this apparently happened, the mayor says, after a couple of people were in a fracas across the street. You see the man there? The police officer walks up to the elderly man and just pushes him down. The man falls flat back on his head, and his head is bleeding, and they keep kind of walking by. We're trying to give the whole context so that we're not painting police in a bad light here. There was some kind of a confrontation. We have no idea if the older gentleman was part of that, but the 2 police officers involved in pushing that man down, for the reasons we don't know, have now been suspended. We're going to have Brian Yennis coming up a little later. He'll give us more context on that, and we'll go a little deeper into the video and get more context about what happened before that gentleman was pushed to the ground, and we do not know his condition right now, but he apparently was taken to the hospital. We'll give you updates as they come in. In the days following George Floyd's death on Memorial Day, a sharp contrast began to develop. Mostly peaceful protests during the daylight hours, only to be replaced by violence and looting once the sun set. On Sunday, President Trump tweeted that the United States would be designating Antifa as a terrorist organization, going on to lay much of the violence at the feet of the far-left group as well as other agitators. Yesterday, the director of the FBI echoed those sentiments.
We're seeing people who are exploiting this situation to pursue violent extremist agendas, anarchists like Antifa and other agitators.
Let's bring in Cully Stimson. He's a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Cully, always good to see you. In your op-ed, which I read a short time ago, you say that you asked, does federal law enforcement designating Antifa as a terrorist group help or help police? And I guess I want to know the findings of that. What'd you figure out?
Off of other cases they are working on, and puts the full force of the federal government, including the ability to go to federal courts and get warrants and the rest of it, on this. As a legal matter, designating them as a domestic terrorist doesn't have any teeth to it, simply because Congress, when they defined domestic terrorism, defined it as acts dangerous to human life that are in violation of other criminal laws at the state or federal level designed to influence government policy. And so there's no criminal sanction attached to that. So you're never going to be charged with domestic terrorism on a charge sheet or an indictment. You're going to be charged with underlying crimes, which is what we're seeing playing out on TV every night.
Yeah, but again, you say it's appropriate, and I want to read this from your op-ed, quoting here, the words terrorism and terrorist have been used to describe an overly broad set of violent acts, from domestic abuse to bombings. Due to the overbroad use of the term terrorist, the word itself has largely lost its meaning, resulting in a political and public disagreement on which organizations, if any, should be labeled terrorists and why. The term, you end with, appropriately applies to Antifa. So, may not have any teeth, but you know what? It should be done nonetheless.
That's right. I mean, I remember years ago when I was a homicide prosecutor at the state level, there was a crime in the state of Maryland of domestic terrorism when, which I used in a case where somebody tried to blow somebody else up in a tent. Luckily, they didn't succeed, but they tried. And that was an act of terrorism at the state level. Here, the federal definition doesn't have any teeth. But what the practical reality, Trace, is that now that Christopher Wray and his agents and other agents of the federal government can use the lawful tools of the federal government to focus on a group. Doesn't matter what the group is, but if they're committing criminal acts, then they're under the spotlight and they should stop breaking the law.
Which is to say that, you know, look, we've got all this videotape of all these looters going in, grabbing stuff, lighting things on fire. I mean, that is potentially valuable evidence to prosecute these. In fact, it is valuable evidence to prosecute these people.
Right. It's not only valuable evidence. The fact is that it's the act of a crime committed in front of everybody to watch. The thing is, though, I assume, Trace, that they're assuming that the overwhelming number of them who are committing crimes simply are not going to be prosecuted because there's so many of them doing it and there's so few resources to prosecute everybody at the state or federal level. And they're probably right.
Yeah, I want to play this soundbite from the Attorney General, Bill Barr, and get your reaction on the other side. Watch.
There are extremist agitators who are hijacking the protests to pursue their own separate and violent agenda. Different political persuasions have been involved in participating in the violent activity. And we are also seeing foreign actors playing all sides to exacerbate the violence.
So Antifa is the most well-known name, Cully, but the Attorney General saying they're not the only bad guys in this.
Right, and the really disturbing thing to me is, if it's not disturbing enough in the first place, is foreign actors stirring the pot, no doubt using social media and other means, like we saw back in 2016 during the election, to create chaos, unrest, and a sense of abnormalcy, which we're all feeling. And so they're succeeding, and I take it that General Barr and Christopher Wray have their work cut out for them, but they'll succeed on some level when they start rolling people up and indicting them.
Yeah, we shall see. Cully Stimson, good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, all four officers at the scene of the arrest that led to George Floyd's death could potentially face prison time. The 3 officers who stood by as Derek Chauvin placed his knee on Floyd's neck have all been charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder and aiding and abetting second-degree manslaughter. Up next, we'll take a closer look at the charges and whether they are solid enough to lead to a conviction.
Today, your information is more exposed than ever. When you shop, bank, or browse online, you're vulnerable to cyber criminals. More threats demand more protection. That's why Norton and LifeLock are now one, combining device security, VPN for online privacy, and LifeLock identity theft protection, backed by a $1 million protection package. Get all-in-one protection on Norton.com.
This is a paid advertisement for legal services from Arnold & Itkin, LLP.
Have you or a loved one been diagnosed with ovarian cancer after regular use of Johnson & Johnson baby powder? You may be entitled to compensation. On May 19, 2020, Johnson & Johnson announced it will discontinue selling its talc-based baby powder products in the U.S. and Canada after thousands of lawsuits alleging asbestos contamination led to a 60% decline in sales over the past 3 years. Substantial verdicts have already been awarded against Johnson & Johnson because of their failure to warn the public of this risk, including a $4.69 billion verdict in July 2018 and 3 other verdicts totaling over $614 million. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with ovarian cancer after regular use of Johnson & Johnson baby powder for feminine hygiene purposes, you may be entitled to compensation. How do you fight for the compensation you deserve? You choose the right legal team that has the experience and resources to get you the most compensation for your injuries.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Just like you, I had problems sleeping. I tried every pillow out there and nothing worked. 15 years ago, I invented MyPillow. It took me 2 years to develop because I wanted to have everything you would ever want in a pillow. I made sure that you could adjust my patented fill so you could have the exact support you need as an individual regardless of your sleep position. I also wanted a pillow that would last, so I made MyPillow machine washable and dryable. I back MyPillow with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. Not only that, I do all my own manufacturing in my home state of Minnesota.
I really like the fact that it was made in the USA. I think that USA products are a better quality product. I've tried a lot of other pillows and nothing's worked like MyPillow.
I'm interrupting this commercial right now to give you deep discounts, not just on my pillows, but also my mattress topper, sheets, and so much more. For example, you can get body pillows regularly $89.99, now only $29.99, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
I used to think that sheets were just sheets. I got the Giza Dream sheets. They are the most comfortable sheets I've ever had.
The Go Anywhere pillow is so easy to just roll up and take anywhere I want to go.
Go Anywhere pillow is really comfortable, so that's what I really like. It's nice and supportive and it's nice and small.
The MyPillow topper, for the first time, has enabled me to have a cool night's sleep. I'm able to go to bed and just get rest.
That's 3 inches of wonderful that's in the MyPillow mattress topper. It's just like a firm cloud.
MyPillow helps me get a good night's sleep so I can do my job in the morning.
Go to MyPillow.com to get deep discounts, not just on my pillows, but so much more. For example, you get body pillows regularly $89.99, now only $29.99, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
When you can't watch, listen. Get the latest news, business, and news headlines on SiriusXM. Anytime, anywhere. Fox Audio on SiriusXM. America is listening.
And there's breaking news out of Portland, Oregon again tonight. You know the fence we've been talking about for the past couple of nights that separates the police from the criminal center and the protesters? Well, now you can see some of the protesters are getting so close to the fence, they're even climbing the fence. And just moments ago, the Portland police have tweeted to tell the people if they are there with their children to bring them home because they are about to apparently send some pepper spray or tear gas gas or some other type of deterrent over that fence and get those protesters back. Night after night, 3 nights in a row, the police have told the protesters to stay off the fence, stay away from the fence. 3 nights in a row, the protesters have pushed up to the fence and they have gotten hit with pepper spray and tear gas. And tonight, apparently, they're about to do the same thing again. We'll keep you posted on what's happening there on Portland. The fence they have been standing in front of for 3 nights, and about this time every night, it gets a little bit contentious. Thousands marched in the streets of New York, ignoring an 8 p.m. citywide curfew that just yesterday had police aggressively enforced. Fox News correspondent Brian Yennis live for us in the streets of New York. Brian.
Trace, good evening. It was the third night of the 8 p.m. curfew in New York City, and just like the last night in terms of how they strictly enforced it, they enforced it again, too, the same way. The NYPD making arrests and pushing back against protesters. This curfew has really become a point of contention. Protesters and activists insisting that this curfew needs to go away because it's creating situations in which the police and these protesters inevitably have confrontations. These protesters, they're families and peaceful, but they are illegally in the streets. Where they started, telling them to go home. Luckily, there weren't mass arrests where we were. Meanwhile, earlier today, there was a vigil for George Floyd. The brother of George Floyd, Terrence, urging protesters to protest peacefully.
I'm proud of the protest, but I'm not proud of the destruction. I'm going to say that again. I'm proud of the protest, but I'm not proud of the destruction. My brother wasn't about that.
Meanwhile, a remarkable press conference by the NYPD Commissioner Dermot Shea today in which he denounced anti-police rhetoric. And he said that politicians and elected officials need to do more to stop inflaming the tensions out there. He believes that their silence in terms of anti-police rhetoric is, quote, sickening. This is what he said.
You look at the anti-police rhetoric, it disgusts me to my core. We are not perfect, as I've said before. Less press conferences, less tweets, more action, more accountability for your words. If you don't have something nice to say, keep your mouth closed, and let's get together and fix this. But the hateful speech is fueling this anger that we're seeing.
Yeah, and Shea said that more than 200 NYPD officers have been injured in clashes. We've seen everything from Molotov cocktails thrown at police to bricks, and also shot at as well. Meanwhile, in Buffalo, a completely separate incident. It's a video that's gone viral. It is graphic in nature, though. 75-year-old man pushed by 2 police officers. He hits his head on the concrete. He begins to bleed. The Buffalo PD said that he tripped and fell initially in their press release. He is in stable but serious condition. It turns out the Buffalo Police Commissioner has ordered an immediate investigation into the issue, and both police officers are now suspended without pay. The mayor of Buffalo, Byron Brown, said that police were responding to 2 groups of protesters who were breaking curfew at the time. Governor Cuomo, Trace, called the incident wholly unjustified and utterly disgraceful.
Yeah.
Trace.
Brian Yennis live for us in New York. Brian, back to you if the news breaks. The 3 officers standing by during George Floyd's death appearing in court yesterday, the judge setting bail at $1 million. The officers are charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder and aiding and abetting second-degree manslaughter. But the charges may have trouble sticking as there is some proof that they questioned Derek Chauvin's actions. Our next guest contending that they may have been overcharged, believing the case will be a tough prosecution from a legal perspective. Let's bring in Randy Zellin. He is the head of White Collar Practice Group at Wilk Oslander LLP. Randy, it's been a long time. It's so good to see you. I'm interested how you figure Derek Chauvin, you said, was initially undercharged, and now you believe these 3 other officers are overcharged. Why so?
Well, I will tell you, Trace, having had the opportunity to think more about this, and having had the opportunity also to look at some of the still photographs, I'm going to reverse myself. these charges are going to stick like glue, and for two reasons. Number one, even if you take a literal interpretation of the Minnesota statute that defines aiding and abetting, which is accomplice liability, break it down. Aiding is helping, abetting is encouraging, but there's something else. Under Minnesota law, if your mere presence is a deterrent to someone else coming in to provide assistance, if your mere presence intimidates people, if your mere presence tells someone, don't come here, that is aiding and abetting. And the fact that even assuming for the moment that these three officers stood around and did nothing, it kept other people from helping. The police presence sent the message, don't come over here, and it permitted Chauvin to keep his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck for almost an entire quarter of a basketball game. Now, if you look at the still photographs, you can see these officers clearly are also on helping Mr. Chauvin to the extent that his knee is on their neck, and they're also on top of him. So to me, that is sufficient for these charges to stick like glue. Whether or not a judge decides to sentence them differently because technically their knee wasn't on his neck, that's a different story. Well,
let me
charging perspective.
Let me play devil's advocate here for a second, Randy. I just want to put this in there. What I just want to make clear, we know this. When George Floyd was killed, Officer J. Alexander Kung was on his third shift as a police officer. Not excusing it, I'm just pointing out the facts. Thomas Lane had been on the force for 4 days, and in that thing, Alexander Kung actually looked over at Derek Chauvin and said, we can't do this. You can't do this. Does that play into this as mitigating factors at all, Randy?
Well, look, we can get into the weeds, and you can argue from a technical perspective that that is some evidence that this officer tried to abandon whatever assistance he was giving. But my God, Trace, we have been doing this for 400 years. Technicalities have no place in this conversation. These officers, they grabbed that badge, attached it to their chest, and said, we are here to protect and serve. They were there to help. They were there to help George Floyd. They didn't help George Floyd. They helped this other officer, Chauvin, kill George Floyd. So the time to talk about, well, I did this, I did that, they did absolutely nothing. And the fact if they were on the job for 3 minutes or 3 years, they had training. And you know what else they had? They had common sense. From a human perspective, if a man has his knee on another man's throat and that man is saying, I can't breathe, it is no excuse to say, I don't have to do anything, or I didn't do anything. You should have done something. And to, as Commissioner Shea said, accountability, do something. Well, these officers should have done something. They are as guilty as Officer Chauvin is.
Well, let me just play this soundbite from Keith Ellison, the Attorney General in Minnesota, and get your response on the other side, Randy.
It's important for all people to understand that, you know, nobody gets to treat anyone else like they're beneath the protection of the law. We passed laws that say certain kinds of behavior is not going to be tolerated. Those laws mean nothing if you don't enforce them.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he's saying. Is he's saying exactly the same thing you're saying, is these guys are out there to protect and serve, and they didn't. So all of these charges, and there have been a lot of people arguing that like you were saying earlier, that the three other officers were overcharged. A lot of people saying, nope, these are the exact charges.
And by the way, Trace, there's something else that's very important to remember. And this goes into the adage of what's good for the goose is good for the gander. We put police officers on a pedestal. If I were to be punched in the face, the person who punched me in the face, they may be charged with not even a crime. They could be charged with just a violation or maybe a misdemeanor. You throw that same punch at a police officer, that is a felony assault. So if police officers get treated differently because they wear a badge, then they got to behave differently because they have a badge. And again, anyone who wants to try to hide behind the Minnesota statute that makes it seem as if you've got to do something affirmative to aid and abet. First of all, presence in this particular instance is enough. And if you don't think it's enough, then the law should be amended. A police officer should not be allowed to do nothing.
And while I've got you here, Randy, I don't know, can you see television? Have you seen the video of the man who was pushed in Buffalo, the 75-year-old man who was pushed by the police officers? I'm not even sure you can see that. But I want to play this again.
I was able to take a quick look at it before I came on with you.
We're going to play it again, and I want to get your response afterwards. The man is there, and they push the man down. And the thing now coming out is they said he initially tripped and fell. Well, they didn't trip and fall. He was shoved back by a police with a helmet and a baton. He's 75 years old. He hit his head on the back of the concrete, and he is now in critical but stable condition. What does that do to the whole narrative here when you've got half the country saying, look, you don't have police officers are being blanketly or, saying they're evil, and they're not. There's some good cops out there. This doesn't help.
Trace, these officers, they bring it on themselves. And if they would close ranks on each other instead of helping each other, what happens here, and we learn this from the time we're children and we teach our children, what you do is one thing. When you lie, when you try to cover it up, that puts you in a completely different place. The same way I represent an African-American man right now who was beaten and tased and choked by 8 white police officers, and to cover it up, he was charged with assaulting them. We have the same thing here. Instead of accepting responsibility, being held accountable, the arrogance of anyone wearing the uniform cover this up by claiming, oh, he tripped. Give me a break. Nothing will ever change until people take accountability and the police are held responsible just like everyone else is supposed to be.
And I got to go, Randy. It's great seeing you, but you're exactly right. I mean, look, in the days of no videotape, if you'd have said, the police officer said, look, he just tripped and fell, the whole world would have said, oh, the poor guy just tripped and fell. And now we've got videotapes everywhere, video cameras everywhere, and the police have got to know that now, especially in this climate, their every move is being watched, and to come out and say, oh, he just tripped and fell, it's not going to fly. Randy Zellin, always good to see you.
Trace, is always a brilliant point. Thanks for having me on.
Take care, my friend. Well, quarterback Drew Brees issuing an apology for his comments on, quote, disrespecting the flag if someone were to kneel during the national anthem.
I just want you to see in my eyes how sorry I am for the comments that I made yesterday. I am sorry, and I will do better, and I will be part of the solution, and I am your ally.
The apology comes after intense backlash from across the sports world, the issue even forcing the Saints to hold a virtual team meeting after many players expressed outrage, with some claiming Brees could not have picked a worse time to express his opinion. ESPN is reporting that most of the teammates have moved on from the issue, but with the NFL season due to begin in less than 100 days, the national anthem before the Saints' first game will be watched very closely, and we should note a lot of other athletes came out supporting Drew Brees' initial statements that he has now backed off on. Meantime, the protests bringing out some agitators who have been destroying properties and looting stores. The businesses most hurt are the mom and pop shops, right? Who are already suffering because they were forced to shut down during the coronavirus pandemic. Ahead, a look at how this could further hurt their chance of survival, and we will introduce you to a woman in New York who is going to absolutely break your hearts. She is a part owner of a deli. We're going to play her sound next. It is unbelievable, her reaction to her deli being destroyed. And we'll also talk about how the U.S. economy as a whole could be affected by the lockdown, followed by the riots. Next.
Is Antifa? And what do they want?
Do you want to have a conversation? Do you mind me?
Often menacing and aggressive, they can turn a peaceful protest into a violent mob. in cities around the nation.
Why do they hate you so much?
They hate me because I was writing unfavorably about them.
Lara Logan has no agenda. Bias in the media. Available now, only on Fox Nation. Right now, get 25% off any Patriot plan.
Good morning, Mr. Sun.
Good morning, Brad.
I'm gonna grow big and strong. Yes, you are.
I'm gonna get this place all clean.
I'll give you a hand. And I'm gonna put Lisa on crutches. Wait, what?
Says she's gonna need crutches. She fell pretty hard. You might want to clean that up, girl. Excuse us.
When owning a small business gets real, Progressive helps protect what you built with customizable coverage.
And I'm gonna...
Donnie, no.
Oh.
Have you or a loved one been diagnosed with ovarian cancer after regular use of Johnson & Johnson baby powder? You may be entitled to compensation. On May 19th, 2020, Johnson & Johnson announced it will discontinue selling its talc-based baby powder products in the U.S. and Canada after thousands of lawsuits alleging asbestos contamination led to a 60% decline in sales over the past 3 years. Substantial verdicts have already been awarded against Johnson & Johnson because of their failure to warn the public of this risk, including a $4.69 billion verdict in July 2018 and 3 other verdicts totaling over $614 million. A loved one has been diagnosed with ovarian cancer after regular use of Call now.
Bottom line is, moms love that Lando Frost premium sliced meats have no byproducts.
Baloney!
Join the call.
Hey, Baloney here.
I thought this was a no byproducts call.
Lando Frost Premium, a slice above.
Are dull headlights limiting your vision? Restore them with Rust-Oleum Wipe New. Easily increase visibility with this award-winning formula. Wipe on long-lasting clarity. Wipe on ceramic protection. Wipe on guaranteed results. Rust-Oleum Wipe New Headlight Restore. See the difference.
Breaking news this hour.
There are more protests developing right now across the country.
We have full coverage of the growing unrest.
We hope for a peaceful night tonight.
I got an Oreo here.
Common bird. Oh, look, over here. Something much better. There it is, Peacock. Included with Xfinity X1.
Remarkable.
Fascinating. Very. It streams tons of your favorite shows and movies, plus the latest in sports, news, and... Oh, run.
The newest streaming app has landed on Xfinity X1. Now that's simple, easy, awesome. Xfinity X1 just got even better with Peacock Premium included at no additional cost. No strings attached. Just say Peacock into your voice remote to start watching today.
With Nurex, I can order my birth control from anywhere.
Anywhere. Anywhere. I can message my doctor at any time with questions.
There's no waiting in line at pharmacies.
Or months to get a doctor's appointment. And Nurex bills my insurance.
As a freelancer without insurance, I love that my pills start at $15 a month with free shipping.
Goodbye, hassle. Hello, freedom.
Get birth control from anywhere. Go to Nurex.com to get started.
I got an Oreo here.
Common bird. Oh, look, over here. Something much better. There it is. Peacock. Included with Xfinity X1. Very. It streams tons of your favorite shows and movies, plus the latest in sports, news, and... Oh, run.
The newest streaming app has landed on Xfinity X1. Now that's simple, easy, awesome. Xfinity X1 just got even better with Peacock Premium included at no additional cost. No strings attached. Just say Peacock into your voice remote to start watching today.
When you sign up for FabFitFun, you know you're getting amazing products at an incredible value. But you're also getting so much more. You're getting the joy of choosing products that will bring out your best, the rush of discovering your new favorite things, and the satisfaction of knowing it all came straight to your door for one really low price. And the best part? You deserve it all. Go to FabFitFun.com and use code SUNSHINE for $10 off your first box.
Well, many stores are suffering from looting as protests spread across the country, but this isn't the only concern on business owners' minds. Many stores are already in a fragile state, reeling from the coronavirus, forcing them to close for months. And the protests coming just as the lockdown was beginning to ease, leaving many owners to wonder if anything will be left when they finally get to reopen. For more on how these protests are affecting an already vulnerable economy, let's bring in Mitch Rochelle. He's a partner with PwC. Mitch, it's great to see you. I just want to play you this soundbite. This is a woman in Brooklyn. She's a part owner of a deli. She also works there. And she said this about the looters who came in and really just ransacked her deli. Watch this.
I worked here part-time. Plus, I'm a part owner of this store. You said Black Lives Matter. Why don't you choke me? I'm black. Look what you did to my store. Look at the things you've done. Good name. Look. The Black Lives Matter. We've been here all night cleaning up. All night cleaning. Tell me Black Lives Matter. You lied. You wanted to loot the store.
And these are minority business owners across the country and other business owners who are suffering.
Yeah, no question about it, Trace. We have economies that are virtually shut down. And the thing to remember about the economy is it's driven by the consumers. So stores like that are the places where people consume. They've been closed, or they haven't had the customer base because there aren't workers in the area. And now to have this on top of it, it's devastating. And there'll be some businesses that were having a hard time clawing their way out of being closed for COVID-19 purposes. Yeah. This is even worse on top of that.
And they don't have insurance. I mean, you talk to these business owners, they don't have insurance because the insurance is costly and it doesn't cover very much. So most of these people just have to do it on their own.
Yeah, you do have a lot of folks who are self-insured, and for many small business owners, their choice is either hiring one more employee with the extra money, or putting more inventory on the shelves, or paying for insurance. And many of them opt not to have insurance. So when times like this come, they're left with no options.
What would you consult, and I got about 15 seconds left, I apologize for the short time, what would you consult these people to do, Mitch?
I think that, listen, my best advice to anybody is absolutely have insurance, because you never know what could happen. And I think, rebuilding and sort of leaning on the community. If this was a store that the community supported, maybe folks in the community could help rebuild. I think some of the best stories coming out of all of this are going to be local folks who live in the area just trying to rebuild their communities.
We hope. Mitch Rochelle, good of you to join us, sir. Continuing coverage of breaking news next.
Their reputation, their insight, your advantage.
We don't just cover financial news, we anticipate it.
Barron's Roundtable, Friday, only on Fox Business. Presented by Invesco QQQ. Here's to greater possibilities together.
We've always said that love is all you need. And now, more than ever, love is all that matters.
Yeah, you can take me there.
And when the time comes, we'll be waiting for you with welcoming arms. Call 1-800-SAMUELS.
I looked at partial bridges. I looked at dentures. Out of all the options, Clear Choice was the only choice for me.
All the specialists with all the technology they need are in one spot. It makes delivering this 21st century world-class dentistry very convenient, and we do it in one day.
Call today to schedule your free comprehensive consultation. We'll even talk financing options while you're here.
I can laugh, people crack a joke, and I smile. It was a life-changing thing.
Call Clear Choice today.
Today, your information is more exposed than ever. When you shop, bank, or browse online, you're vulnerable to cyber criminals. More threats demand more protection. That's why Norton and LifeLock are now one, combining device security, VPN for online privacy, and LifeLock identity theft protection, backed by $1 million protection package. Get all-in-one protection on Norton.com.
Attention, consumers who've used heartburn medications such as Zantac or ranitidine. The over-the-counter heartburn medication Zantac and its generic store brands have been linked to cancer. According to the FDA, Zantac and ranitidine contain NDMA, a known cancer-causing agent. NDMA has been linked to cancers of the liver, kidney, pancreas, ovaries, esophagus, and other cancers. NDMA is one of the strongest cancer-causing agents, both in single doses and in smaller doses over time. If you or a loved one have taken a heartburn medication such as Zantac or ranitidine and have had cancer, you may be entitled to substantial compensation without going to court. Call the Negligence Network if you or a loved one have ever taken heartburn medication such as Zantac or store-brand ranitidine and were diagnosed with cancer in the past 10 years. You may be entitled to a cash award. Call now to see if you qualify for free. Call 1-800-700-5545. That's 1-800-700-5545.
During this crisis, millions of Americans have lost their jobs, leaving many feeling stressed and anxious. And most of us just don't know how to deal with it. But we can try by taking